Hi everyone, so it is Scones Day or Scones Day depending how you prefer to pronounce it. I've always said scones, I've no idea why, but there we go. So first of all, I've got all my ingredients weighed out. That's the way I like to work. I've got a monitor here with the recipe and everything on it to make sure I do everything in the right order according to your copy of the recipe. So bear with me if I'm looking over there, that is why. So first of all, I've got my dry ingredients all weighed out, and I'm going to pop the flour, the psyllium husk and the baking powder into this bowl. So there are lots of brands of baking powder. Make sure it's a gluten-free one. Most of them are, but obviously that's something that's really important to us. I'm going to give that a bit of a mix in, and then we will add the butter. So I've got the unsalted butter here. It's been out of the fridge just whilst I'm getting everything set up, really. It doesn't need to be warmed. It can be used straight from the fridge, but it can be a little bit hard to work with, but we want it cold really for the recipe to work well. So I'm just cutting it into little cubes, and I will add that in. So I've got no jewellery on this morning, the reason being that I'm going to get my hands in here. So we're going to rub the butter into the flour. Now you're doing two things here. You're getting rid of all the lumps, making it a nice even consistency, and we're getting a bit of air in. So we sort of pick up some butter and rub it like that or like this, and keep working it until all of the butter is incorporated, so you get sort of an even consistency. This will take 5 minutes or so, just gradually scooping down to the bottom of the bowl to get the flour up and mixed in with the butter. So that's all done now. That's just an even, crumbly texture. No big lumps of butter, no flour left at the bottom without butter rubbed in. And I'm just going to add the sugar. This is where you'd add sultanas if you were using them. Personally, I prefer them plain. So we mix in the sugar, and then I've got 2 large eggs broken into this measuring jug. I'm going to whisk them and then top it up to 300 ml with milk. So skimmed milk, whole milk, this is semi-skimmed, whatever you've got. There we go. So I'm going to add this in, but just saving a bit. So I normally save, I've said about 25 mils just to give you an idea. You just need a very small amount left in the jug. When we've made the scones, we'll just put a bit on the top to help it brown. So I like to start now with a knife. This is the knife I just used to cut the butter. And this just starts off the process of mixing the liquid in. So it's quite soft, it's starting to come together. Shouldn't be hard work really. Now, all being well, we won't need any more flour or any more liquid, but you can adjust at this stage, but be cautious, because if you're not careful, you can end up adding a bit more flour, then it's too dry, so you add a bit of milk, then it's too sticky, and before you know it, you've actually changed the dough and they won't come out quite as well. So I'm going to now put a little bit of flour on the worktop, just a dusting, stop it sticking, and tip the whole lot out. There we go. You can do this in the bowl, but actually I found on the worktop it gives you a bit more space to work with. Just bring it, you see that? Just bring it all together. Don't overwork it. We're just squashing it really. Bringing all those crumbs in. And then start to knead it just a little bit. Not as much as if you were making bread, for example. You don't want it to go tough. I think kneading bread activates the gluten, doesn't it? Well, obviously we don't have any gluten. I'm no scientist, so I'm not exactly sure. But what you can see here is we've got a nice soft dough that's not sticking to the worktop, but it's not crumbling, falling apart either. So I am just going to clean up my hands a little bit, and then we will make them into scone shapes. So I've just cleaned my hands because they tend to get a bit doughy. Just finishing it off now, not working it too much, but we've got a nice soft dough. We need a little bit more flour on the worktop. There we are. Now at this point you can use a rolling pin, but it's quite a soft dough and you can squish it a bit much, so I tend to just press it out. If you use the palm of your hand, you don't get so much in the way of fingerprints. You can just treat it a bit more gently than you would pastry, let's say. Okay, so then I've got a round cutter. These can be straight around this edge or fluted, sort of zigzaggy, whichever you like. And I'm just going to cut them out. So here's a tip. Once they come out of here, sometimes you find one edge is kind of squished down, and what will happen is it will rise like this. So if you've got a low edge, just lift the top a little bit so that it's not sort of squished, and then it should rise more evenly. So I'm going to put this, move that out of the way so you can see on my tray. Look, and just keep going. Now they will rise, they will spread a bit, so don't try and put too many on the baking tray. You can use 2 baking trays. Just making the edges intact. Let's put 5. Now they're quite thick, they'll double in height. If you want to make smaller ones, or bigger ones actually, the baking time will just have to be amended, but use the cutters that you've got. So there we go. Obviously I need to work with the rest of the dough, but just to show you now that last little bit of egg and milk we had from earlier, if you've got one, use a pastry brush. This is a silicone one, and just brush the top with a little bit of that. This will just help it to brown. Now, if you don't have one of those, just use a teaspoon. Just put a little bit on the top. You see that? And just spread it on. It will basically just give it a nice golden top. And then in the oven. So those are ready to go in. I put my oven on whilst I was clearing up actually before I restarted the filming. So that's all nice and hot. If you haven't put your oven on yet, just do it now. Wait for it to come up to temperature because these need to go in a nice hot oven. And we'll come back to them in a sec. Now, whilst those are in the oven, I've decided I'm not going to bake them all today. So the rest of the dough has made another 5 scones, 5 and a bit anyway. So what I'm going to do is put them on smaller trays like this, double wrap them in cling film, and that can go in the freezer as it is. Now, next week or next month, I might want some scones, so I'll just take this out of the freezer, take the cling film off, heat up the oven, and in they go. They'll take longer to bake. It's difficult to be precise because it will depend if you've got a deep freeze, so they'll be at a much colder temperature than a standard mini freezer in the kitchen, for example. But my advice would be reduce your baking temperature a little bit and bake them for longer. Keep watching them, keep checking them. Break one in half when you think they're done and just check that there's no raw dough in the middle. And basically, you've got fresh scones whenever you want them without having to go back to scratch, from scratch, should I say. So here they are. They've just come out of the oven, and I just want to show you a close-up of how they look inside. So if we just take one, so they're nice and browned underneath. I'll just move these out of the way a bit. So the first time you make these, cut one in half when they seem to be done. These have taken 14 minutes. And just have a look inside. So as you can see, oh, they're hot. It's a nice even crumb. There's no raw dough in the middle. It's evenly coloured. The texture is the same throughout, and that's how you know they're done. If they're still sticky right in the middle, pop the rest, and that one actually, back in the oven for another couple of minutes. But they're done. So we have some lovely scones to cool down. So now for the fun bit. So these are nice and cool. I like them before they're completely cold, but you don't want the cream to melt instantly. Need a spoon. I put the jam on first. Nice blob of jam. I actually like raspberry jam instead of strawberry jam. Who says that it has to be strawberry? Certainly not me. And of course, plenty to go with, to go around. Now this is extra thick double cream. If you buy double cream, just normal double cream, you'll need to whisk it, whip it with either a hand whisk or an electric whisk. You can buy clotted cream, all sorts of things. Single cream won't whip up, so be careful of that. There's also whipping cream. I like this if I can get it. It's extra thick double cream, so straight out of the pot. Nice big dollop on there and on there. Yum. Enjoy.